Hello students, I am Vidya from English Magus, your online English teacher and guide. Welcome to our video lesson, the Rattrap, Chapter 4 from Flamingo. Today, we embark on an engrossing exploration of a tale of transformation and the unexpected. Let's unravel the threads of compassion and second chances as we delve into this timeless narrative. Before we take up the chapter, let's get familiarized with the authors a bit. Selma Lagerlöf, a Swedish writer, made history as the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1909. She authored her debut novel, Gösta Saga, at the age of 33. Lagerlöf's works often explore human struggles, compassion, and the transformative power of empathy. Before I start explaining the text, here is a short overview of the chapter to help you grasp its theme. The Rattrap by Selma Lagerlöf is a moving short story that presents a philosophical view of life. The tale revolves around a lonely peddler who sells rattrap. His harsh existence leads him to develop a cynical worldview. However, through kindness and empathy, he finds redemption. Here is a tip for you to extract the best out of this lesson. Pause at each slide to read the text before listening to the explanation. Let's start now. These initial lines of the text describe a man who made and sold small wire rat traps. He created them from materials he begged for in stores and on farms. His business didn't earn much money, so he had to beg and steal to survive. Despite his efforts, he remained very poor, with ragged clothes, thin cheeks, and hungry eyes. The text describes how lonely and boring life was for the man who walked along the road thinking to himself. One day, he had an interesting thought. While thinking about his rat traps, he suddenly realized that the whole world, with its lands, seas, cities, and villages, seemed like one big rat trap to him. The man thought the world existed only to trap people. It offered riches, joy, shelter, food, heat, and clothing just like a rat trap offered cheese and pork. As soon as someone was tempted by these things, the trap would close on them, and then their freedom and happiness would end. These lines tell us the world had not been kind to the man, so he found a strange joy in thinking badly of it. It became his favorite pastime during his lonely walks to imagine people he knew getting trapped by the world's bait and to think about others who were still being tempted. One dark evening, as the man was walking along the road, he saw a small grey cottage by the roadside. He knocked on the door to ask for shelter for the night, and the owner, an old man without wife or children, welcomed him. Unlike the usual unfriendly faces, the old man was happy to have someone to talk to. He cooked porridge for supper, shared his tobacco, and played cards with the man until bedtime. The old man was very open and shared many details about his life with his guest. He used to work as a crofter at Ramsjo Ironworks and farmed the land. Now, he relied on his cow for support. His cow was exceptional, providing milk for the creamery every day, earning him 30 krona last month. These lines mean the rat trap seller probably looked doubtful, so the old man stood up, went to the window, and took down a leather pouch hanging there. He pulled out 3 wrinkled 10 krona bills and showed them to his guest, nodding to confirm his story. Then, he put the money back into the pouch. The next morning, both men woke up early. The crofter was eager to milk his cow, and the other man felt he should get up since the crofter had. They left the cottage together, and the crofter locked the door, putting the key in his pocket. The man with the rat traps said goodbye and thanked him. Then, they went their separate ways. Half an hour later, the rat trap peddler returned to the cottage. He didn't try to enter through the door. Instead, he went to the window, broke a pane, reached in, and grabbed the pouch with the 30 krona. He took the money and put it in his own pocket. Then, he carefully hung the leather pouch back in its place and left. In this passage, we come to know how the rat trap seller felt pleased because he had money in his pocket. He knew he couldn't stay on the main road because it was too risky, so he decided to go into the woods. At first, he didn't have any problems finding his way, but as time passed, he got more lost because the forest was big and confusing. He tried to walk in a straight line, but the paths kept turning in different directions. After walking for a long time, he couldn't find the end of the woods. Eventually, he realized he had been circling around the same area. Suddenly, he remembered his earlier thoughts about life being like a rat trap. Now, he realized he was in a similar situation. He had been tricked by something enticing and was now trapped. The entire forest seemed to close in on him, like a prison he couldn't break free from. It was late December, and darkness was quickly enveloping the forest, intensifying the danger and his feelings of gloom and despair. Eventually, he reached a point where he saw no way out and collapsed on the ground, utterly exhausted. believing his end was near. But just as he lowered his head to the ground, he heard a sound, a steady, rhythmic thumping. He recognized it immediately. Those are the sounds of a blacksmith's forge, he realized. There must be people nearby. Summoning all his remaining strength, he forced himself to his feet and stumbled in the direction of the sound. In these lines we come to know the Rattrap seller going towards the Ramsjo Ironworks, which once used to be a bustling facility not too long ago, equipped with a smelter, rolling mill, and forge. During the summer, there would be lengthy queues of heavily laden barges and scows gliding down the canal, which connected to a sizable inland lake. In the winter, the roads around the mill would be darkened by the coal dust that settled from the large charcoal crates. However, with the passage of time, the production of iron had decreased considerably. On that chilly evening just before Christmas, the master blacksmith and his assistants sat in the dimly lit forge near the furnace, patiently awaiting the pig iron, which had been placed in the fire, to reach the right temperature for forging on the anvil. Periodically, one of them would rise to stir the molten mass with a lengthy iron rod, only to return moments later, perspiring heavily. Following tradition, they were dressed in nothing more than long shirts and wooden shoes. Throughout the time spent in the forge, a lot of different sounds filled the air. The large billows groaned as they pumped air into the fire, and the burning coal crackled and popped. The fire boy worked tirelessly, noisily shoveling charcoal into the hungry mouth of the furnace. Outside, the waterfall roared, its sound echoing through the surroundings, while a biting north wind forcefully drove rain against the brick-tiled roof. In these lines we learn how the Rattrap seller entered the mill without being noticed by anyone. Perhaps due to the cacophony of noise within the forge, the blacksmith failed to notice when he quietly opened the gate and stepped into the forge, only becoming aware of his presence when he was standing near the furnace. It was not uncommon for destitute wanderers, lacking better shelter for the night, to be drawn to the forge by the warm glow of light seeping through the grimy windows. They would often come in to seek warmth in front of the fire. The blacksmiths cast only fleeting, disinterested glances at the intruder. He appeared typical of his kind, unkempt, with a long beard, dirty, and clad in ragged clothing, with a cluster of rat traps hanging from his chest. He requested permission to stay, to which the master blacksmith responded with a haughty nod of consent, without deigning to utter a single word. The tramp remained silent, not intending to engage in conversation but simply seeking warmth and rest. At that time, the Ramsjo iron mill was under the ownership of a highly esteemed ironmaster, whose primary goal was to produce high-quality iron for the market. He vigilantly oversaw the operations day and night, ensuring that the work was carried out to the best of its ability. At that precise moment, he entered the forge as part of his routine nighttime inspection. In these lines we learn what happens when the ironmaster, the owner of the mill, enters the mill. Upon entering the forge, the ironmaster's attention was immediately drawn to the towering figure, draped in tattered attire, who had ventured so close to the furnace that steam rose from his soaked garments. Unlike the indifferent demeanor of the blacksmiths, the ironmaster approached the stranger, scrutinizing him closely. He then removed his slouch hat to better examine the man's face. "But of course, it's you, Nils Olof," he exclaimed. "You look quite a sight." The man adorned with rat traps had never crossed paths with the ironmaster at Ramsjo before, nor did he know the man's name. However, he reasoned that if the well-dressed gentleman believed him to be an old acquaintance, there might be a chance of receiving a few kroner. Therefore, he saw no need to correct the misconception right away. "Yes, indeed, things have taken a turn for the worse for me," he responded. "You shouldn't have left the regiment," remarked the ironmaster. "That was your mistake. If only I had still been in the service back then, none of this would have happened." "Well, now, of course, you must come home with me." The idea of accompanying the ironmaster to the manor house and being welcomed like an old army companion did not sit well with the tramp. "No, that won't do at all," he exclaimed, appearing visibly alarmed. He thought of the 30 kroner. Going to the manor house would be akin to willingly walking into a dangerous situation. All he desired was the opportunity to rest in the forge for the night and then quietly slip away without drawing attention. The ironmaster assumed that the tramp felt embarrassed due to his shabby attire. "Please don't assume that my home is too grand for you to visit," the ironmaster urged. "Elizabeth has passed away, as you might have heard. My sons are abroad, and there is no one at home apart from my eldest daughter and myself. We were just lamenting the lack of company for Christmas. So come with me and help us devour the Christmas feast a bit more quickly." But the stranger remained firm in his refusal, repeating repeating his rejection multiple times, and the ironmaster realized he had no choice but to relent. "It seems Captain von Stehle has chosen to stay with you tonight, Stjernstrom," he remarked to the master blacksmith before turning away. However, he chuckled to himself as he departed, and the blacksmith, knowing him well, understood that he hadn't spoken his final word. It wasn't long before they heard the sound of carriage wheels outside the forge once again, but this time it wasn't the ironmaster who arrived. Instead, his daughter appeared, evidently sent in the hopes that she might have better luck convincing the stranger to join them. The daughter entered, accompanied by a valet carrying a large fur coat. She wasn't particularly attractive but appeared modest and somewhat shy. Inside the forge, everything remained as it had been earlier in the evening. The master blacksmith and his apprentice remained seated on their bench, while iron and charcoal continued to glow in the furnace. The stranger had sprawled out on the floor, using a piece of pig iron as a makeshift pillow, with his hat pulled down over his eyes. Upon seeing the man, the young girl approached him and lifted his hat. Startled, the man, accustomed to sleeping with one eye open, jolted upright, appearing somewhat alarmed. "My name is Edla Wilmanson," the young girl introduced herself. "When my father returned and heard that you intended to spend the night here in the forge, I asked if I could come and invite you to stay with us instead. I'm sorry, Captain, to see you in such difficult circumstances." She regarded him with compassion in her weary eyes and then noticed his fear. He must have either stolen something or escaped from jail, she speculated to herself. Hastily, she reassured him, "You can rest assured, Captain, that you are free to leave us just as easily as you arrived. But please, stay with us for Christmas Eve." Her tone was so warm and inviting that the Rattrap peddler must have felt a sense of trust in her. "It never crossed my mind that you would personally concern yourself with me, miss," he responded. "I will come along right away." He accepted the fur coat offered by the valet with a deep bow, draping it over his tattered clothing, and followed the young lady out to the carriage without sparing a glance for the astonished blacksmiths. However, as he rode towards the manor house, he couldn't shake off his ominous premonitions. "Why on earth did I take that man's money?" he lamented inwardly. "Now I find myself ensnared, and there's no way out." The next day was Christmas Eve, and when the ironmaster came into the dining room for breakfast, he probably thought with satisfaction of his old regimental comrade whom he had run across so unexpectedly. "First of all, we must see to it that he gets a little flesh on his bones," he said to his daughter, who was busy at the table. "And then we must see that he gets something else to do than to run around the country selling rat traps. It is queer that things have gone downhill with him as badly as that," said the daughter. "Last night I did not think there was anything about him to show that he had once been an educated man." "You must have patience, my little girl," said the father. "As soon as he gets clean and dressed up, you will see something different. Last night he was naturally embarrassed. The tramp manners will fall away from him with the tramp clothes." As soon as he uttered these words, the door swung open, and the stranger walked in. He appeared completely transformed, clean and neatly dressed. The valet had given him a bath, trimmed his hair, and shaved him. Additionally, he was now clad in a handsome suit of clothes belonging to the ironmaster. He wore a crisp white shirt with a starched collar and proper shoes. Despite his guest's improved appearance, the ironmaster's expression remained disapproving. He regarded him with a furrowed brow, indicating that while he might have mistaken the stranger in the dim light of the forge's uncertain reflection, it was clear now, in the bright daylight, that he couldn't possibly be an old acquaintance. In this excerpt from The Rattrap, we witness a confrontation between the ironmaster and the stranger. The stranger, who had been living a false life of splendor, now faced exposure. He admitted that he was just a poor trader and had sought refuge in the forge. Despite the deception, he claimed no harm had been done. The ironmaster, though hesitant, acknowledged that it hadn't been entirely honest on his part and suggested the sheriff might intervene. These lines highlighted themes of honesty, consequences, and compassion in the story. In these lines, the tramp stepped forward, slamming his fist on the table. He declared, "Listen, Mr. Ironmaster," and explained that the world was like a colossal rat trap. Those seemingly good things, they were just cheese rinds and bits of pork, enticing people into trouble. And if the sheriff arrested him now, the ironmaster should remember that someday, the ironmaster might crave that big piece of pork too, and find themselves ensnared. The ironmaster chuckled, acknowledging the tramp's words. However, he asked him to go out of their house. He said to him that he would not call the sheriff as it was Christmas. But, as soon as the man reached for the door, the daughter intervened. She insisted that he stay with them for the day, expressing her reluctance to see him leave. And with that, she gently closed the door behind him. The father's stern voice interrupted the daughter's actions. She stood there, feeling embarrassed and unsure of how to respond. Earlier that morning, she had been filled with joy, imagining how she would create a warm and festive atmosphere for the destitute stranger. The idea lingered, compelling her to intercede on behalf of the vagabond. The young girl's compassionate plea resonated deeply. She considered the weary stranger, perpetually wandering, unwelcome in every corner of the land. His life was a relentless cycle of rejection and fear. And so, she proposed a simple act of kindness, to grant him a day of respite, a moment of peace amidst the chaos. Just one day, a rare gift in a world that had largely turned its back on him. The ironmaster grumbled quietly, unable to oppose her compassionate stance. The young girl acknowledged the mistake but insisted that they shouldn't drive away a fellow human they had invited, especially after promising him Christmas cheer. The ironmaster playfully teased her, comparing her to a parson, and expressed a hope that she wouldn't regret her decision. Undeterred, the girl took the stranger's hand and guided him to the table. "Sit down and eat," she said, knowing her father had relented. The man with the rat traps remained silent, simply helping himself to the food. In these lines we see how Edla's kindness influenced the rat trap seller. Repeatedly, the tramp's gaze rested upon the young girl who had advocated for him. Why had she taken such a compassionate step? What could be the underlying motive behind this seemingly irrational act? Despite the stranger's presence, Christmas Eve at Ramsjo unfolded in its familiar pattern. The tramp caused no disruption. His sole activity was slumber. Throughout the morning, he lay on a sofa in one of the guest rooms, sleeping soundly. At noon, they roused him to partake in the bountiful Christmas feast, only for him to return to his peaceful slumber. It felt as though, after years of restlessness, he had finally found solace and safety within the walls of Ramsjo. As evening descended and the Christmas tree glimmered with light, they roused the stranger once more. He stood in the drawing room, squinting against the candle's glow. Yet, soon, he vanished again. Hours later, he stirred once more. Descending to the dining room, he partook of Christmas fish and porridge. As the meal concluded, he moved to each person, expressing gratitude and bidding good night. But when he reached the young girl, she conveyed her father's intent. The suit he wore was a Christmas gift, no need for its return. The ironmaster extended an unexpected invitation. If the stranger desired a peaceful Christmas Eve, free from harm, he would be welcomed back. The man with the rat traps remained silent, his gaze fixed on the young girl in awe. The following morning, as the ironmaster and his daughter prepared for the early Christmas service, their guests slumbered undisturbed. At the church, after the service, an announcement was made to the congregation to be cautious about a thief disguised as the rat trap seller, who had stolen 30 kroner from the old crofter. The ironmaster, along with his daughter, returning from church around 10 o'clock, the young girl sat with a heavy heart, her demeanor more downcast than ever. While at church, she discovered that one of the elderly crofters from the ironworks had fallen victim to a man peddling rat traps. Her father's words echoed in her mind, "That fine fellow you welcomed into our home, how many silver spoons remain in the cupboard now?" As the wagon halted at the front steps, the ironmaster inquired of the valet whether the stranger was still present. Rumors from the church had labeled him a thief. The valet confirmed that the stranger had departed. He had taken nothing. On the contrary, he had left behind a Christmas gift for Miss Edla. As she eagerly unwrapped it, her joy erupted. Inside the small rat trap lay 3 crumpled 10-kroner notes. But there was more. A letter, its characters jagged and bold, awaiting her discovery. In these lines we learn the contents of the letter. The rat trap seller expressed his gratitude to the noble Miss Edla Wilmanson, who had treated him kindly throughout the day. As if he were a real captain, he wished to reciprocate her kindness. He had written in the letter that the rat trap he gifted her was symbolic. It represented redemption. He wrote he would have been trapped in the world of rat trap if Edla had not elevated him to captaincy, granting him the power to clear his name. He urged Miss to return stolen money to the old man by the roadside, whose money pouch served as a bait for unsuspecting wanderers. He signed himself as Captain Von Stehle. This tale of unexpected compassion and transformation resonates with timeless lessons of empathy and second chances. With this, the chapter ends. Here is the list of figures of speech used in the chapter. Pause the video and read it. Kindly like, share and subscribe if you found the video lesson helpful. Thanks for watching the video. Stay tuned for our upcoming lessons.